time, we want to welcome you to Focus on Liberia. This is Primetime Sunday. Primetime Sunday is our program where in the evening we sit down with you, the Liberian people, to discuss issues that are very important to us as a community. In today's edition of Primetime, we are discussing ethnicity and nation building. To discuss the very important topic, we have brought in for you two outstanding guests. Our first guest, who is a panelist here on this show, is Dr. Taryor. Dr. Taryor, we want to welcome you to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you very much. The name is Taryor.
Taryor, thank you. I appreciate correcting me. I am also not happy when somebody pronounces my name very wrong. So thank you for that correction. I appreciate that. Welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you.
All right. Also, as our guest and panelists on this very important discussion, we have Dr. Vivian Seton. Dr. Seton, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Seton there, and this is now her first time on this network. We are more than happy to have her again to discuss this very important topic. And so to you, our followers in cyberspace, we will now ask you to share the show so that others can be part of this conversation. My name is Anthony Sia, co-hosting with Mr. Dennis Jai. And again, we are discussing ethnicity and nation building. We all hear about ethnicity. It's a huge, huge issue in Liberia. So we want to get some understanding from two individuals we research and found to have deep understanding of the issue of on ethnicity and nation building. And we brought them in so that we can ask them the hard question. They better be prepared because we are prepared to ask them all the questions Liberians have been asking. Mr. Jai. Mr. Jai, I can't hear you. What is going on there? All right, your voice is still low, so I'll take it over from you. Is it better now?
Better now. Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah.
All right. I want to say welcome to Focus on Liberia. This is part one of our series on ethnicity and nation building. We all have heard about ethnic groups. We have heard about tribes. We have heard about Congo and country. We have heard about Mano or Ma versus Crown, Mandingo versus this one and that one. We've heard all about that. We have heard about different kinds of stereotypes in Liberia. Okay, the Grebo people love tabadu. This other person can eat fire coal and all these things about ethnicity. So this sometimes it becomes the elephant in the room that people don't want to talk about. Some say, well, we all belong to one tribe that is Liberia. Some say our diversity is very important. So to talk about this all important topic, we say we have allotted 2 Sundays to the show Ethnicity and Nation Building. In part 1, we're going to deal with the impact of ethnicity on nation building, and that will take us into the history of ethnic tensions in Liberia and what the impact has been. In part 2, which is next Sunday, we're going to talk about ethnic factors that can lead to national development and reconciliation. So we want to say welcome to this all important show. We have Dr. Nya Kwiawon Taryor, who has been on this platform for a number of times now discussing these kind of issues. And also Dr. Vivian Seton, who's also going to give us some insight on this all important topic. So let's start by just your opening statement with some definition of ethnicity, tribalism, what all these things mean. And just your introductory statement, you introduce yourself first briefly, and also your opening statement on this all important topic. Let me start with Dr. Seton.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Jai, for inviting me on your show. This is a very important topic, the topic of ethnicity, tribalism, groups. Sometimes we call them country, sometimes we call them Congo, sometimes we call them American, Liberian, and we divide ourselves into foreigners, people, sons of the soil. all kinds of names for this phenomenon. This phenomenon has led to a lot of trouble in Liberia. In fact, I think it was part of what caused, quote, the coup and then the civil war. And now that we're trying to build our nation back up, this question of ethnicity is playing a big role in our country. So I'm happy that you told me worthy to be part of your panel discussion, and I hope I'll have something to contribute to the matter.
Dr. Taryor.
Well, I've been here before, and I'd like to extend my thanks and appreciation to you, Brother Jah, and also to Sia, who I met for the first time today. And this topic, ethnicity, is very touching. When I say touching, it goes to the heart of everything that happens in Liberia. And it has different ramifications, and different people hearing about different ethnic groups, which sometimes they refer to as tribe. And I don't use that term tribe, but I rather use ethnicity for several reasons. And one of the reasons is that it's better to say ethnicity than to say tribe, because people have different concepts and precepts about the word tribe. Some people refer tribe as people who are uncouth, people who don't know anything. They are savages. They jump from tree to tree. So early anthropological meaning of tribes sometimes is distasteful. So I'd rather say ethnicity. So the issue of ethnicity in Liberia is a major issue that should be continuously discussed, because it gives us some broader perspective in terms of who we are, what we are, and the direction in which we want the nation to move. So for you to introduce this particular topic on your show is a great asset. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
We also want to note here that because this topic is so important, we are trying to get our guests from various backgrounds, both ethnic, political background. We have invited Dr. Abdullah Dukle. He couldn't be here tonight because of a work schedule. He's traveling right now as we speak. So Dr. Abdullah Dukle is not going to be here tonight. We also invited Mr. Edward Carter. He was supposed to be here, but the 11th hour, he has some uncontrollable circumstances that prevented him from being here. We also invited Mr. Kai Gerald Wler, who's the publisher of the Liberian newspaper called, and he's not able to be here tonight. I forgot the name of that paper. I'll remember later. He's not able to be here tonight because he's not feeling well. He went for a simple issue at the hospital, and he had to kind of be taken in, so he's not here tonight. So we are happy, and for some who think that we try to get everybody on here so we can really discuss the length and breadth of this topic, because it's so important to every Liberian. So just wanted to say that's why we don't have a full house to represent some of the major ethnic groups that have been involved in some of the that have been part of some of the ethnic tensions, or some of the ethnic division that have been part of it, or that have been affected directly in our ethnic upheaval. Back to you, Mr. Sia.
Thank you, Mr. Jad, and welcome to you, our guests. I will want us to first start with ethnic tension before 1822. And my first question is, how did inter-ethnic relations look like before the arrival of the air slaves? And let's start with you, Dr. Seton.
Well, before 1822, um, our people in Liberia were divided into ethnic groups, of course, and they were these ethnic groups were clustered. So let's say you have the Vais, the Mendes, the Golas on one side, okay? Then you had the Teles, the Bandis, the Beles, and the Lomas as another cluster. Then you had the Kra, the Gios, and as another cluster. Then you had the Sapo, the Crew, the Bush Crew as another cluster, and then you had the Bassas, the Days, and some other minor ethnicities as a cluster. Of course, you had the Bandis and the Kisis, all related to the Lomas. So these ethnic groups um, lived more or less in harmony. Sometimes there were tribal or ethnic conflicts, but basically they got along well. But then, with the coming of the settlers, um, well, let me go back a little. Um, these groups used to have what we call the bush schools or the tribal schools or the Sunday um, for the women, and then the Pora, the Whaley, the Suke, and the Sumuyaya for the men. These were the major bush schools that were there to educate our people and teach them the important things of life. Basically, they got along well. But then, from time to time, other groups came to Liberia, or what we call Liberia now. At one time, it was called the Green Coast, and it had many other names. The Portuguese came, but the Arabs came in the Middle Ages. Shortly after the Middle Ages, the Arabs came. And then around 1400, the Portuguese came. And then the Dutch came. Um, the French came for a short while. Um, the Germans and other European colonizers came to Liberia. So this brought about some tension. And for example, if you go into the Mana country, you will hear that there are words for the Portuguese. So you say, but wait now, all the way up in the Mana country, there's a word for the Portuguese. It means that in language, a language will never have an expression for something that it doesn't know or it hasn't experienced. So the Manas must have come in contact with the Portuguese for them to have a word, Portuguese or whatever they pronounce it, for the Portuguese. So all throughout our history, foreigners came and tried to intervene and in our culture and society. This, of course, brought about some tension. So our people became weary or leery of quote unquote foreigners coming and trying to intervene in our day to day life in our politics. Um, then in 1822, um, the settlers came, the people who came from the United States to come and colonize Liberia. So this brought about a major rift in our history, in our interactions, and things got tense. And so from that time on, um, our ethnic groups decided to form coalitions and work closely together as separate groups. Of course, this went on until 1980 when the coup happened, and then of course not so long after that we had the Civil War. So I guess what we have to do now is to see how we can bring our ethnic groups back together to build our nation to what it used to and what it should be.
Hmm. Dr. Tayo.
Well, I wouldn't like to repeat what that Seton has said, but there are some other lingering factors I think we need to also reflect on. Before the coming of the settlers in 1822 in Liberia, the different ethnic groups were basically considered nations in themselves. Nation in terms of their culture. We have not had uniformity of culture all over the area. We were divided into different nations. There was the Man Nation, the Kwele Nation, the Bassa Nation. So ethnicity was a basis of each nation. And there were also sharing of languages. Some of the languages, you have cognates. What I call cognates is one word is in a Man language, and that same word is also in another language. For example, when you say Druma, you have the word Druma. In the Man language, you have Druma. In the Kwele language, and Druma in another language. So we share some words together, and certain words we did not share together. And there were some nations that were stronger nations, and there were some nations that were weaker nations. So ethnicity, all the different ethnic nations were not in solidarity with each other. There were some conflicts between the individual nations. So we're not all one and loving, but we have conflicts. In fact, those conflicts, when those conflicts were going on, the conflicts were exacerbated by the coming in of foreigners from different parts of the world. And when they came in for slavery, they captured people from the different ethnic groups and took them away. However, our people were basically farmers, hunters. The technology had not advanced as it is now. So people did basically agriculture, and it was labor intensive. It was not capital intensive. They used tools, primitive tools, to cultivate land, to do business and market. And the British, for example, had a stronghold in our area for many years. The stronghold it had, they completely had control before the coming in of the settlers. And some of the money that we used at the time was shillings and pounds. And you go in the villages, you will hear people talking about, give me 2 shillings, give me 5 shillings. Until later on, when the American dollars came, and even when the American dollars came, they were still considering them as shillings and dollars and pounds. And $4 would be 1 pound. $20 would be either 5 pounds or whatever. So what I'm saying is that we still use the British money. There were times we'll talk about later when, for example, during the war, the early war, that the American Liberians came in and started shooting at the crew people. The crew people did not appreciate that. They did not appreciate it at all. What they did, they refused to have a Liberian flag hosted on their land. They rather had the British than they had flag than the Liberian flag. But we'll deal with that later on during our discussion tonight.
And you mentioned about, Dr. Taryor, you mentioned about the selling of slaves. How did the intra-tribal conflict contribute to that? Where is there any evidence that those ethnic groups were involved in the selling of slaves, or those who they captured from the other ethnic groups?
Oh yes, the difference between the type of slavery that existed within our community was domestic slavery. And domestic slavery will be somebody will be captured in a war and brought to a town. And they had a length of time the person would live there and work with the people. It was not dehumanizing like the transatlantic trade. Slavery was dehumanizing. They didn't separate children from their mother or husband from wives. Domestic slavery, people worked, and then at some point they freed them and they left them and they went to their own place. But as you compare that with the Atlantic trade, what happened was that people were carried to the United States or England or other places, and they were expected to stay there forever, not to return. So whenever persons were captured from the other ethnic groups and brought in, when the Portuguese or the Spanish people or the British people came in, what happened is, so especially when the Arabs were involved, they sold these these slaves to these foreigners for guns, gunpowder, gun, beads, buckets, pots, and they took them away. There were some, it had been documented. It had been documented.
Okay.
All right, let me come to you, Dr. Seton. So the ex-slaves came, if I can refer to them like that, and then the settlers too, and they decided to establish a republic. And so I just want to know, how did that impact relationship among the ethnic group and collectively as ethnic group with the government they tried to set up?
Yes, and Mr. C, this topic, we could talk about this for an hour, and as Dr. Kwiawon so rightly said, he has a lot of knowledge on the topic, but we have to go a little bit further, okay?
Okay.
As we said, Liberia had domestic slavery. For example, people say the white people are lazy, right? Because they have slaves. And but in Africa, slavery was our penal system. Okay, we didn't have jails. We didn't have. We had to develop iron to the extent where iron bars could be considered deterrent or fencing. So if someone committed a crime, and we have identified about 16 um, uh, offenses that were punishable, adultery, right? If someone had committed adultery, it was a crime. He paid a fine, or he was held as a slave. Um, Embezzlement, theft, all kinds of other crimes. Some of them, for example, if you stole, they will cut off your right hand. If you stole for the second time, they cut off your left hand. So many forms of penalty were administered. So people, but the criminals lived in the community. They didn't have the iron bar system, so they lived in the village amongst other people as criminals. Sometimes they put shackles around their feet. They were not allowed to do certain things. So, but these criminals or offenders had to be fed, right? They had to be taken care of. So what happened is when the white man, quote unquote, came to Africa or to Liberia,
Right.
um, people were living off their subsistence farming. It was very difficult, like Dr. Chawa said, to grow food. So you had to feed the people, right, who you were holding as criminals. So when the Portuguese and other foreigners came, they said, give us your people. You don't have to feed them. Let them go with us. Or after a war, when people captured prisoners of war. So you don't have to feed them. Let us just take them with us. But they didn't explain to the people in Africa that when they brought them to Portugal, or when the Dutch or the other foreigners took our people away, that when they got to where they were going to enter into this transatlantic trade system, whereby they would enter slavery and be slaves, as Dr. Taiwan said, until until the end of their lives. Okay, it wasn't like that in Africa, but slavery caused a lot of bad feelings, a lot of harm. Um, when they were brought over here, they had to fight the war. They had to grow food, tend the plantation and do most of the work. And it was miserable, but there was no way for them to escape the system and go back. In the Vai country, for example, there were many wars fought at the end of the 18th century. Um, One that was called the Baiburi, uh, the, 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 the war where people shot hot coals, okay? It was in Cape Mount and in Sierra Leone. Um, they had so many wars that was going on. The Sofa War, okay, between the tribes in Liberia and the tribes in Sierra Leone, and there were so many other skirmishes. For example, my great grandmother was Queen Sandemani, Fatima Sandemani, and she got the name Sandemani because she liked the Sunday and she built the girls' school up. Other tribes used to come to the Vai people to understudy their school system, the Sunday and the Poro, the Beli, the Suke, and the Sumuyaya. Some of them, of course, were in Lofa. But people used to travel between tribes to learn the culture and how they conducted wars or ran their nations and their kingdoms. So there were so many wars that was very devastating. And as I said, my great grandmother fought the war, and she usurped her power from her husband, and she became she made herself queen, and she ruled the area of the Vai, Mende, and Zay people, and she became so powerful that people came from other continents to understudy how she ran her kingdom. Um, this went on until the early 19th century when the American Liberians came. Our people resented them. For example, we heard about a woman by the name of Matilda Newport, right? Um, the, the Bassas and the Days that live in the area that we call Mamba Point today um, were very much against the foreigners coming to Liberia, and they tried to fight them. But this woman by the name of Matilda Newport took the coal from her pipe and put it in the cannon and shot the cannon, and the people dispersed and ran away for fear. So there has always been conflict among the ethnic groups in Liberia, and some of them we heard about, and some of them we have not heard about. There are so many other ethnic kings like Sao Boso and um, and some of the Mandingo chiefs who fought the the settlers who came there.
All right, thank you. And before I go to um, Dr. Tia, this canon that
It's Tayo.
Tayo,
Tayo.
sorry, Dr. Tayo, this canon that Martina Nimpo, according to history that she fought, did it actually kill people?
I wouldn't know. I heard that she frightened them away when the cannons went off. The people dispersed and they ran away. Now, I don't know whether somebody actually died. I don't know. I don't know the head count of that skirmish, but uh, she had the intention of doing it. But whether it actually happened, I don't know.
All right. Yep, let's come to you, Dr. Tayo. So fast forward, there's this nomenclature. We have indigenous Liberian, native, American Liberians, Congo. First of all, where did that nomenclature come from? And these people we refer to as native. Where did they actually come from?
Well, there have been several names called indigenous people. Sometimes they refer to them as country people. Sometimes they refer to them as native people. The nomenclature is, it actually depends on who's looking for what. Now, as far as derivation, where they came from, people have migrated all over the West African region, in fact, all of Africa for many, many years. For example, this place we are now, some of the area that was called Green Coast by the Portuguese when they came there, because the pepper, Managera pepper, was sold in that area, so they were selling greens, so they named the place Green Coast until the settlers came in and they named it Liberia. During those early days, there was mass migration from different parts of the world, from the far east to the far west, and we usually refer to that as the Sudan belt. And then some came from the north and descended down as the land, the upper region, the Sahel region, was turning from forest into desert. So people, because of the desert land, there was no food, no water, the place is dry, they were eating date palms. Some of them migrated down to the southern region where there were evergreen trees and same type of climate all throughout, with the exception of seasons. And some people came from the south and went up. So there was migration all over the place. But we have been told that, for example, the Kisi people were the first people in the land. Like Dr. Seton was saying earlier, our people are divided into maybe 5 or 4 different set of people. And this was done by Dr. Westerman and Cy Harry Johnson. And they divided Liberia into the Mendifu group, the Menditan group, the West Atlantic group, and the Crew or Cloud group. The Mendifu group of languages includes the Loma, the Bendi, the Kwele, the Mendi, the Ma, and the Dan. And then the Menditan group of languages include the Vai and the Malinki, or refer to them as Mandingo if you will, or the Malinki. And the West Atlantic group of languages includes the Kisi, the Gola. It's believed that these were the first people that came into the land, and other people, other ethnic groups migrated from other parts and joined them. But the fact of the matter is that in early times, there were some ethnic groups that were close to the Monrovia area, So when the Western civilization that was brought in the 19th century by the settlers or expatriates, when they came in, they had influence, say, for example, early on the Kwele people, because the Kwele people are not too far from Monrovia. And the Kwele people then were appointed district superintendent. Some of them were appointed surveyors. Some of them were appointed to be clerks. So they moved into other areas up the line. We usually refer to up the line. So when they came to the Ma country, for example, they heard people speaking the language. Ma, instead of saying Ma people, they say Manu. Manu Gani. Manu meaning Ma person. Manua means Ma people. So they attached that name, and eventually Manu became Mano. We are not Mano people, we are Ma people. And then, of course, they didn't only change the name of the ethnic group, but they also changed the names of the places. For example, Gompa, instead of calling it Gompa, they call it Ganta, because for the Kwele people, Ta means town. So they will add the word Ta to whatever name was given. Ganta, Tapeta, Salala, Kakata. So the places in Stephen Senikole is a Kwele name. So we had not only American Liberians had influence over the indigenous people during the early time of contact, but we also influenced each other. And in our community, Dr. Seton was talking about the sorority and the fraternity groups, that's Poro and the Sandy. The Poro society was for the men, and the Sandy society for the women. And that was the early part of education that our people had. In the Sandy society, The girls learn to be wives. They learn to take care of babies. They learn to do things that women do. In the men's society, which was the poorer, the young men learn to hunt. They learn to build houses or huts. They learn to when they marry, what their responsibilities were. But this was not only within the Liberian community, but the Mendi, in fact, all of Lofa County, including Cape Mount, including some places in Sierra Leone, among the Mendis, all of those people practiced this society issue. And there are some ethnic groups in Liberia that have nothing to do with the poorer or the Sandy society. Completely different. They have different culture. This is why I was saying that in early times, these different nations, some of them share culture, but all of them did not share the same culture.
Right. Let's delve a little bit more into the Congo and country, or American Liberians and natives.
Okay.
So, to what extent did the coming of the settlers kind of, impact those tribal or ethnic tension? Did it help it? Did it help to widen it? Do we have some people? And let me give you some specific examples about the Gribble Wars, the Crew Wars, and the establishment of the frontier force and all these things. So how did
let me explain to you. When the Gribble area, it's a large piece of land in the Kipamos area. The Gribble people can be considered a branch of the Crew or the Cloud people. The family, same type of family people, they belong to the same group. The related subgroups include the Bassa, the Cloud, and the Dane people. There was a reverend early, I think it was 1837, during that time. They called it Reverend Jesse Laurie. And there was another pastor, indigenous Gribble pastor, called Prophet Wade Harris. Both of these men had a great influence in the Gribble area. They exerted exceedingly great influence on the people during that time. But the reason for the conflict was that people who live within the Gribble people that live within the Kipamos area at that time were under the code of laws that were drawn up in the United States with the help of a few Gribble counselors during the early period of the settlement. And the Gribble learned different trades, of course, because missionaries came in, taught them carpentry, masonry, agriculture, painting, bricklaying, taught them all those kinds of things. But then the Episcopal Church also came in and had most effective impact in the area. But then there was an armed clash between the settlers and the Gribble community. This was in 1857. Troops were in the canoe, and they came in, they crossed the Shepherd Lake, and they opened fire on the Gribble people. Some of the people in Galloway, with the canoe, they killed about 26 people, and they drowned in the river. The settler in Maryland asked for protection from the Liberian government because the settlers in Maryland considered themselves as a nation. They were not part of the Liberian government at that time, early history. So when they asked for help from the Liberian government came and quelled down the rebellion. So then they negotiated with the Gribble people. But as we have been told, the underlying cause of the conflict was due to the question of ownership of the land. The Gribble repudiated Liberia's claim that the settlers have bought the land in the early original negotiation. The Gribbles the Grebo people said, no, you negotiated with us, but you did not buy our land. But the American Liberians said, no, we bought the land. So it was land issue that created all the problem. But then in 1875, again, a war broke out along the coast, and they tried to reunite the Grebo. The Grebo people tried to get themselves reunited. And after destroying the settlers at Bunker Hill and another place, I think they used to call it Philadelphia, the Grebos were suppressed by the Republic of Liberia with the help from the United States during that conflict. Around Kepamos, this was called the Protestant Episcopal War because members of the church played a very important role in that struggle. That struggle in 1857. Around Kepamos, this was called the Protestant Episcopal War because of the role of the church. The church did not side with the American Liberians or the settlers. They sided with the indigenous people, and they were encouraging the indigenous people, the Grebo people, to take pride in themselves and to write, in fact, their languages, to write in their own language instead of using English. So there was this continuous help from the church, and at that war, during that war, the church took the side of the Grebo
people.
So Dr. Seton, the broader question now is, what is that role, or how has this, the establishment of the government and then the coming of the settlers helped to maybe solve this ethnic tension or make things worse? What is that role or the impact have been?
Well, you see, as the learned professor said, Dr. Taryor, this is politics and diplomacy. So the Liberian government would adapt or would foster a friendship with a group of people if it was in her, if it was to her advantage. Like you said, right? They would side with one group if they felt that the outcome would favor them. So many times they played both sides, okay? Like we mentioned in the, in fact, my mother wrote a patent about this annexation of Maryland to the Republic of Liberia in 1857, right? And Maryland joined the Republic because things were getting bad, so they couldn't survive on their own. So that's when they joined the Republic of Liberia. Um, Sometimes it was for the advantage of the indigenous people or the native people, and sometimes it was disadvantageous to them. But the Liberian government always makes sure that they had the upper hand in most of these conflicts. Okay, um, but ultimately, I think um, the Liberian government or the republic had to foster young people because they needed people to run this nation. For example, Blyden went to Barbados and brought a lot of people with him, or he sent for people. Although there were um, Liberian men at Liberia College, indigenous men, but he sent to Barbados to bring families from Barbados, the Barclays, the Grimes, the Padmores, uh, because they didn't want the indigenous men to become too educated, too smart, because they felt that from that source, tension would arise. So they brought these people into the country and educated them rather than educating the native son. Okay? Um, uh, I would like to say something. A professor of linguistics told me that when you go to Liberia, you just tell someone to count to 10 or to tell you how you say 10 in their language, okay? And the professor alluded to this. If the person says that, like in Vai, Tang, um, all these languages, Tang, it means that they are the Mandi Tang. They belong to that group of languages. Or if they say Fu, like in Pele, then they are the Mandi Fu languages. So that's how you can know which groups of people this person belongs to it. It is not only the question of counting from 1 to 10, but it's also the question of culture, how the marriage culture, the bride price, how they fought war, and so many things depended on language. Um, can I say something that, for example, if you go to Liberia, you will notice that a lot of the rivers and the mountain ranges have Portuguese names. Like you go to the Mana River, okay, um, and the Mana River is called the Bea in Vai, but now we call it the Mana River because when the Portuguese came, they changed the name to Mana, and then they made it the boundary between Liberia and Sierra Leone. You have the Cestus River, you have the Kavala River, you have so many other mountain ranges that have Portuguese or Dutch names in Liberia. Um, this question, the other day I was watching Jeopardy, and Alex Trebek asks, which country is it in Africa that has where the island that is closest to the free port is called Bushrod, and of course the panelists, I think one of them said Liberia, but then I found out that Bushrod was the nephew of George Washington, and that's why they call that island Bushrod Island, named after George Washington, of course, the first president of the United States nephew. There are so many interesting things that we can relate back to America or back to England or uh, other uh, people who have settled the area, like the Dutch, the Portuguese, which whatever the British, um, and the history is so important. And but it also has something to do with how our people perceive people or perceive things. Like I understand that when you see the Kisi people or the Pele people, you notice that most of them are light skinned, right? Um, or some of the Beles, they are light skinned people, although they're in the heart of Liberia. Because as the learned professor said, this was the first groups of people who traversed the Sahara to come to Liberia. And of course, these tribes um, remained seclusive over hundreds of years. So they maintain that complexion, okay? Or when you go to Nigeria, when you see the Igbos, you say, why are the Igbos lighter than the other Yorubas or somebody? Other because they came to from the Sahara. And so many other interesting things uh, went on in our history that will explain certain things, marriage culture, um, the question of bride price and stuff like that. Am I wrong, Dr. Tower?
No, you are correct. Quite correct. You are correct.
And Dr. Tayo, we saw this indigenous Liberian versus American Liberian for a long time, which culminated, or if I may say for the lack of a better word, in the coup of 1980. So let's give some historical context to that tension that ultimately saw the overthrow of President Turbot and the American Liberian regime.
Okay, just briefly, I think when you gave an outline earlier, you talk about the Gravel War and the Crew War. Let me just spend maybe 2 minutes to deal with the Crew incidents. What happened? We have talked about the situation with the Gravel, but as late as in 1907.
Yeah, and before you continue, Dr. Elwood don't want you to also give some references to some of the things that you are saying, because he called them as assertions. So if you don't give any reference, they remain assertion. That's a comment from Dr. Elwood Dunn. Go ahead.
Okay, I certainly will. I certainly will. If you want to know what I'm talking about, there is a book out. There was a book out earlier at some point, and the title of the book is, here it is. Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second. This is the book. The title of the book is The Prophet Harris. It was written by Halliburton. And in it, he explains a lot about the Grebo and the Crew War. And that is in the chapter called The Grebo and the Settlers. The Grebo and the Settlers.
Okay.
So the reference is this book, The Prophet Harris. And the author of that book is Gordon McKay Halliburton. And the statement I'm making, it comes directly from the source. All right, now let's continue the crew situation. The crew situation is that in 1907, there was again a crew rebellion. The crew opposed Liberian flag on the land to be hosted there on their soil. They refused to accept the crew nation as part of Liberia during that time. They rather had the British flag on their land than the Liberian flag. Again, a war broke out, and the British gave the Liberian a gunboat that they used to put down the crew resistance, and that was in 1908. In 1909, the Liberian government decided to make example of the crew people and punish them for the rebellion. The crew town that were supposed to be demolished were Grances, Sasstown, Galloway. These were to be fined heavily. And if they didn't pay, they were to be bombarded and demolished completely with the gunboat that the British have given to the Liberian government. Did we get that clear?
Yes.
Furthermore, all the communications to and from the crew, egress and ingress, will be broken and will be stopped or blocked. And at this time, the British counselor at that time, during the time of Barclay, was called Lamont. He went to Barclay immediately and told him that the gunboat that the British had given to the Liberian government should not be abused that way. Should not be abused that way. And finally, the issue was resolved. And some crew people were put in certain positions. And again, you use that, the Prophet Harris, Halliburton. You go there, you will find the information.
Mr. Jha, you asked about the establishment of the frontier force, okay? Maybe I'm not an expert on this, but I read somewhere that the, the people from Lofa didn't want to join the Liberian government. In fact, their towns were fortified. If you go to Lofa, they had towns they called Fisebu, Zigida. Some of these towns don't exist anymore, but at the time they were fortified, and if anybody approached them without proper credentials and permission to enter them, they would fight war. So there was a Colonel Lomax uh, from the Liberian Frontier Force stationed in Lofa, and he mistreated the Lomas. So they decided to come. They came through Bupulu. They decided to walk to Monrovia to lay their grievances. The government sent for Mr. Lomax. They had the hearing and they found Lomax to be wrong in default of the government's policies. He didn't say anything. He waited until they were going back to Lofa, and he had 8 of the Loma chiefs shot. Of course, I always tell people, like, when a Liberian dies, a lot of people go to the funeral because we are so few that when one of us dies, it makes a dent in our population. So the Lomas were very upset because they had killed 8 of their leaders. And so that's why they continued not to join the army until about 1914 when they joined the Liberian army, and of course, they joined it in numbers, and they called them um, the Liberian Frontier Force because they were mostly made up of lawmen. So that's where that name came from.
Thank you. Again, folks, you are watching Focus on Liberia. This is Primetime Sunday, and we are discussing ethnicity and nation building. We have been going into the history of Liberia when it comes to ethnicity and conflict. Let me come back to you, Professor Taryor. What framework, if you like, political framework, did the settler use to restrict the rights of those we refer to as indigenous and natives, and why reason they felt the need to do so?
Okay, well, that's a matter of opinion.
Okay.
And also you can look at the history itself. Have you ever read The Animal Farm?
Yes.
Or The Animal Farm?
Yep.
George Orwell?
Yes, by Orwell, yes.
Mm-hmm.
When you read that book, it gives you a little insight into our own situation. Just briefly, in few words, the animals were on the farm and they felt that they were being exploited by the farmer. And the farmer was called Mr. Jones. So Mr. Jones, by the time he came one morning, the animals had already had a meeting that he was going to be deposed of the place. He would get him out. And the animals would take the farm, it would be their farm, and they would control everything. But then after the farmer came in, the animal said, "You're not getting in here. You go out, you go wherever you came from." So the animals took over, but they needed some leaders among themselves. They said, "But then who's going to be our leader?" But only the pigs were able to read the alphabet. That's all they did. So then the pigs became the leader in the area. And what happened with the pigs? They set up, I think, 7 rules or so. And some of the rules were no animal should sleep in a bed. Any animal with 2 legs without wings is not an animal, not with us. An animal must be able to, they had several rules. Animals do not sleep in bed. Animals should only sleep where there was no bed. And anyone who sleeps in a bed is not animal. All animals are equal. So they had all these rules. But as soon as the pigs took over, what happened? They started changing the rules. And then one of the changes was all animals are equal, but there are some that are more equal than others. Are you following?
Yes.
Okay. There are some that are more equal than others. And then, of course, they said all animals should stay there. They shouldn't have any dealings with outsiders at all. But then the pigs started selling the eggs from the chicken so they would get some money from outside, from people outside. They started breaking the law, making it for themselves. And they started sleeping in bed. They started doing other things. So when you see our history, these people have gone not by their own will to America and other places, England, the islands, and then they came back. When they came back, they had a lot of experiences there. And in fact, the reason for coming back was that they were not treated as equal. In America, they would pay tax, but yet they had nothing. They were sent in a bike of the bus. They could not make decisions. They were exploited. They were manipulated. Everything happened to them. But then when they came back home, those people they saw we are all equal, but there are some more equal than others.
Hmm.
I mean, we have a very deep history but it is time now for reconciliation. Yeah, in fact, for example, in the 50s, there was a group of people going around, they call them you too late. And the you too late group will go in the villages and raid the villages and kill people, take their vital parts and do whatever they wanted to do. It was another way of Ku Klux Klan.
And was that being done by the settlers, the group you're talking
Of
about?
course, of course,
Okay.
of course. And anyone who wants references all over the place.
Wow.
So what's your point, Dr. Taryor?
The point I'm making is that our history has not always been clean. We have been devastated by our own selves. Meaning,
but you tend to lay the blame on the Americo-Liberians.
No. Earlier, I told you some of the problems that happened, that it was not only outsiders, it was slavery was conducted in our different groups, and we had different impacts on each other. Whether we were Bassa or Ma or Dan, or all these things, we had impact on each other. And the impact that we had, I'm talking about the beginning of our nation, when our nation started, some of the problems that we underwent.
All right. Let's before we bring in our colors, there were other ethnic tension. Let's take, for instance, and we listed them here as the Kra and Mandingo, for instance, versus the Ma and the Dan, or the Mano and the Gio.
Yeah, okay.
We also have the Mandingos versus the rest of Liberia, if I may put it bluntly that way. And now what we have now that people start to talk about is Southeastern Liberia or Kru versus the rest of the country. These are all tribal tensions. The tribal tensions came to their peak during the Civil War. So we know that there's a Americo-Liberian native. We also see the intertribal. Let's give some context to those things that I mentioned briefly. Let me start with Dr. Seton.
Well, before we go there, let me just say something very quickly, okay? I had to write a paper and I didn't know what to write my paper on, so I figured out something. I called it the God-dog syndrome, whereby God and dog are some of the few words in the English language that are mirror images of itself. Dog, D-O-G, God, G-O-D. Okay, although they are mirror images, but their meaning is far apart from each other. In other words, when the settler left here, he had been treated as the dog. So when he went to Liberia, he treated the people as he considered himself the god and treated people like the dog. So that's why I think some of these tensions arose in Liberia. Um, I think we have come quite a ways in trying to solve this problem. Okay, um, um, by intermarriage, by cohabiting with each other, by interacting with each other, by going to school with each other, we have come to know each other and have come to live amongst each other. But um, but the perception that the so-called countryman is not able to occupy certain positions, or he cannot be given the responsibility to carry out certain functions, or it still is in our mind. So, for example, if you go to Liberia, most likely the head of the organization will be a quote unquote uh, conga man, okay? And then as you come down the line, then they will have so-called indigenous or native people occupying um, the lower positions or the inferior positions. But I think now what we are working or what we're trying to accomplish is that we're giving positions of responsibility to the native man. And so far, so good. Things are working out good. And I think we should continue to um, embrace that practice where you put the so-called countryman in charge or at the head of the organization.
Dr. Seton, you said
Yes, sir.
something. People are saying the native men being in charge, things are getting worse, and you say things are getting better?
Yes, I think things have gotten better. Maybe not 100%. Maybe the problem hasn't been solved, but I think things got much better because before you would never find a countryman. Let's say 100 years ago, you would not have found a countryman in charge of the ministry of the department. But now at least they're trying to establish the practice, and I think things are getting a little better.
And Dr. Seton, if I may, when you say things are
Yes.
getting better, is it just the main fact that the natives, I will refer to them, are now heads of government, ministry, and agency? Is that the better you're talking about, or in terms of development and leadership?
Well, things are getting better. By appointing certain people, we hope, we assume, we want uh, the leadership and the practice to get better. But the idea that we can even feel confident enough to appoint certain people to positions of responsibility means that we are heading in the right direction, or we want to head in the right direction.
All right. And let me come to you, Dr. Taylor. I mean, I'm still struggling with what Dr. Seton just said. Well, I think where she's speaking from, and I'm just assuming here, I think where she's speaking from when she said things getting.
I think you are still struggling to call me Taryor.
Okay, then I will call you Kwiawon.
No, just say, remember, tie your shoes. Taryor.
Okay, Taryor.
So,
Taryor.
Mr. CA, I don't want for us to forget the issue of crime Mandingo versus Ma and Dan.
Yeah, may I just
We'll come to that, but let me ask the question, Dr. Taryor. And the thing is, I think she's speaking from this marginalization that led to conflict. The progressive were trying to go at the settlers then who were in power, and because there was this gross exclusion of natives from participation into government. And for also say things are getting better, I would assume it's because there is the huge influx of natives now almost everywhere. It's like the natives are in control. Is that the better you're talking about?
No, I don't know, but she will answer that one. But let me tell you something.
Okay.
In the William V. Tubman became president in 1944.
Okay.
Before then, you have had Barclay and some other people.
Right.
But there was a policy. In fact, William V. Tubman started a policy, the open door policy and the integration policy.
Okay.
So that indigenous people and the expatriates can get together and love each other. In fact, I have been married twice. My first wife was from the American-Liberian settler group. And my second wife, the same. I have no particular hatred against American-Liberians. I think it's time for us to get together. But during Tubman time, while sectionalism, tribalism, regionalism, and all of these things were flourishing, he introduced this integration policy so that he himself started wearing the Grebo outfit because where he lived was a Grebo place. He lived in a Grebo community. He would wear coat, jacket, and talapa, the Grebo custom. And not only that, but he visited different counties. And those places that were not expected to be counties, but only provinces, he turned them into counties as well, so that there can be equal representation around the country. Of course, people brand Tubman as a despot, or they call him aggressive president. Whatever the people call him, he did a lot of good stuff in changing the landscape of the country, our perspective and views about other things. He was a benevolent dictator. He was a dictator, but in some area, in the interest of the people. It was during his time, the open door policy brought in Peace Corps from all over the place, from America during John F. Kennedy's time, in order to come to Liberia and work in the villages and towns and help to get our people to learn and become self-sufficient. In addition to that, bringing the people from America with Peace Corps to work in Liberia, he also helped to modernize a lot of our institutions. Tubman, not that he doesn't have any political scar, but he did a lot of things. And the integration issue we are talking about, I think he was the first major president. Barclay attended it. Some other people attempted to bring about integration, but I think Tubman was most forceful in his integration policy, so that during his time, many indigenous people and settlers were getting married. They were interchanging. Names were being changed from Peter Joe to Flomo Toba, and other things were happening. Right. And even the dress of the people were being changed. Some people, instead of wearing suit and tie every day, they started appreciating the indigenous culture.
Right. So that was how they bridged the marginalization. So, I mean, we've talked extensively about the country concord. Let's go into the inter-tribal tensions that actually reached their peak during the Civil War. And you specifically from the Man tribe, and you have, there was a conflict, tension between the Ma and Dan, or the Mano and Gio on one side, and the Kran and Mandingo on one side during the Civil War. Let's talk about that.
Okay. In our early history, and including most recent history, the indigenous people have been trying to be a part of the overall national structure, to have a voice in the government, to have a say in the government. So many ways our people attempted. There was a mushrooming of political organizations in Liberia during the late 60s and early 70s. You had the springing up of Moja, the Movement for Justice in Africa. You have the springing up of PAL, the Progressive People Alliance, that later changed into PPP. Then you had other organizations in Liberia that were progressive groups. The whole purpose of that was to be able to change the content of our political discourse, so that basically the indigenous people will have a part to play in it. In 1980, what happened? Why Moja, Susuku, Pa, all these people were attempting to get the change, not from the barrel of the gun, but to get this from the poll. You go and vote. In fact, at some point in Liberia, before, maybe during the 80s, 1980 itself, there was a mayoral election to take place in Liberia, in Monrovia. And Amos Sawyer, from a progressive group, was the choice of most of our people who were in a progressive movement. I think there was a Chuchu Horton or some other guy who was running. But eventually we didn't have that election. But what I'm saying is that we're attempting to have the progressive people were attempting to have their voice. But unfortunately, what happened, or unfortunately, whatever is fortunate or unfortunate, what happened is that there was a military takeover. And the military takeover, Doe became the president of the nation. Doe became the president of the nation. When he became president of the nation, some of the people were saying, oh, now the country people have their voice. Now the country people are here to do what they have to do. But in the first place, Doe was not elected by the country people or the people, the nation. He came to power by the barrel of the gun. He lived by the sword. And unfortunately, he died by the sword. Oh, hold on, let me stop this communication. Please, I'm in a conference. Okay, so it was unfortunate for Torvald at the time. He was caught off guard because of historical circumstances.
So, Dr. Taryor, are you going to the ethnic tension, the inter-ethnic tension, or?
Yeah, these are all the tensions, yeah, it's part of it. Okay.
Yeah, you're going to the political. I want to see the tribal part.
Okay, the tribal part, okay. But when Doe took over, there was what you may call, I'm trying to look for the word here, and the word is, well, he started putting his own people into power. Nepotism.
Yes,
Nepotism. He started putting his own people into power. And all over the place, there was a personal conflict between him and Kwiawon Taryor. And that personal conflict between him and Kwiawon Taryor, he extended it to the rest of the Ma people and the Dan people, which was very unfortunate. Mr. Doe was, in fact, a student in one of the institutions that Moja built. And that was unfortunate because he went to one of our schools, Marcus Garvey School, that Moja had worked on for many years. And it was there, and he was one of the students of the place. In the meantime, he was also in the military. Now, when he took over, since he was the master sergeant and the person with a higher rank among those who brought a coup about, they gave him the leadership, but at the time, he didn't even know his left from his right. As soon as he consolidated his power, he turned against his own people who were part of the coup and murdered all of them, almost all of them. Very unfortunate. But then the tension developed. And the tension that developed was that the Ma and Dan people were together, and Doe, the Kran, and some other people were together. It is believed that Mandingo people were along with him. And some of the villages in Nimba County were raided by those people sending, they were supported also by the Malinki people. Again, how true that is, you can investigate that. So the tension developed very, very tight, very strong tension between the ethnic groups, the Dan and Man together, and the Malinki, the Kran together. And people in Ghana said they did not want Malinki people there. They drove them out of the place. And right now there are land issues all over the place to be judged.
Okay. Dr. Seton, with all these tensions, first of all, do you really believe that after the war, there's still ethnic tension or rivalry, or is it just a political thing, or is it real? And we know these things went to their peak during the Civil War. Since the Civil War, I don't know what has been done to kind of resolve those inter-ethnic conflicts. So speak to me about what you know about that ever since the war started.
Well, I don't think I know much about it,
Okay.
Mr. Shah, but I think the ethnic tensions have subsided a little bit. But what I think is now, you see, our tribes or our ethnic groups have are like large families, okay? And so what is happening now is that people are clinging to their family, okay? So not so much the ethnic group, but to their families. So if they if they happen to be appointed to let's say to head a ministry, to make sure that they practice nepotism, they would bring the cousins and family members into that ministry to be employed. Okay, so I think now what's going on is not so much an ethnic struggle, but it's a family struggle whereby people want to make sure that their ethnic group progresses. So that's what I think is happening,
Hmm.
and they favor them.
Let me bring on our first caller. Caller Christopher Tobasi, you are live.
Well,
Oh yeah, thank you very much, Brother Ja. I want to say one quick thing before I get into my talk. Dr. Taryor, I wouldn't say that the native man don't know his left from right. Because since I think what happened was that there was too much propaganda, and the American Liberian were not willing to allow the native men to lead. So all kinds of propaganda went on. Because at that time native men had no native men have held power in Liberia. When I talking about power, I mean presidency or whatever. And so we don't know, So if that is the case, then I will not term it as he doesn't know his left from right. But that's just my argument. Maybe I could be right or wrong. To Dr. Taryor and Dr. Seton, the only way we can move forward is when we as a nation have these Professor Larry David. Yeah, if we have honest discussion about these uncomfortable discussion, we gotta have them. That's the only way we can move forward as a nation, and that's the only way we can heal. My argument has always been that this is not an anti-American Liberian or Congo people advocacy. It's a pro-reconciliation and healing advocacy. So this has always been my position. I'm saying that if we don't talk about these things, if we keep sweeping them under the rug, we're going to run into another situation. But if we look at, for example, America is still talking about slavery today. America is still talking about discrimination today. Mm-hmm. America is still talking about the American Revolution, there wars. America is still talking. So we got to have these discussions. We got to talk about them freely without any fear of retaliation from anybody. And one thing Dr. Seton talk about is the names of our river seems to be our children's history and now Portuguese history. The flag, the capital city, all these things. The only way we Liberians can go back to being until we can recognize these errors. I think we should rewrite the history of Liberia. I think the only way we'll get that identity, the only way we'll get that identity is when we go back and rewrite our true history, our real history. Why will we call somebody St. John River? What was the original name of that river? Why will we? So we got to fix this country. You people as historians, you people as writers, we got to fix this history, and we got to teach it in our schools. And we got to teach it. We should be free to exercise or to celebrate our ancestors. We should be free to celebrate Kwakoko and other indigenous leaders.
Mr. Tobasi, please, we got other callers.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Before you come in, let me give chance to Professor Larry Davis. Professor Davis, welcome to Focus on Liberia, Your Life.
Dennis, good evening. How are you, sir?
I'm wonderful.
Well, Dennis, let me just say I'm enjoying your conversation, and I wanted to mention this. And I honestly think that perhaps Liberia should take a cue from what Rwanda has done. As a matter of fact, the president of Rwanda has actually outlawed ethnicity, and as you guys all know, that Rwanda went through just a horrific civil war, and within 3 months, over 1 million people were killed. But today, 25 years later, the country has rebuilt. And I also wanted to say this too. I've read extensively the works of Dr. Carl Patrick Burroughs, and he's a Liberia expert. And one of the things that I will agree with your other guests, your other hosts, is that I don't think the real history of Liberia has been told. And especially the contributions that have made by, if you will, so-called indigenous people. We know exactly what the Americo-Liberians did. They created the country. I mean, their institutions, what they brought to what is now Liberia, are massive, and we all know about that. I mean, from what Tubman did with the Monrovia Group, which eventually became the AU, and so many other things. But I don't know much of anything about what contributions have been made by the indigenous population, or in essence, what are some of the long-standing institutions. And I hope tonight that maybe your guests can actually speak about that, because I really don't know anything in regards to how the so-called indigenous people have actually created long-standing institutions across Liberia or across the country that has impacted the country. I think that's a part of the issue. And
good question.
I was going to say this. I wanted to say one more thing too. One of the beautiful things about being, I'm actually African American, and African Americans have lived in the U.S. for over 500 years, and they are an amalgam of African people from all over the continent. And so with us, we had to kind of form a brand new ethnicity. The average African American has ancestors from literally all over Africa because of the transatlantic slave trade. And plus, we have substantial European and some Native American ancestry. So the beautiful thing about us is that when I did my DNA, for example, and I'll say this and I'll go, I had ancestors from Mauritania, from Nigeria, from Cameroon, from Congo, from Angola, from Madagascar, from England, and of course, Native Americans. But if you ask an African American who he is, he's just that, an African American. The ethnicity stuff is gone. That's been gone 500 years ago. And so I think that needs to happen in Liberia. Thanks so much, and I'll take my answer or, my response off the air. Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you. Let me start with you, Dr.
All participants are muted, and they can unmute themselves.
Dr. Seton, what has been from Dr. Professor Davis, what has been the contribution of Native Liberian? And then for Christopher Tobasi was talking about, we need to change those names. Your response?
Yes, I agree with both gentlemen. We need to rename the country, okay? Find indigenous names to give to, and put the westernized name in parentheses after it, but we need to find the original and ethnic names for some of the rivers, towns, cities, and natural phenomenon in the country. And secondly, I think I told you the last that I'm working on a book, but I had a mishap and I haven't done a lot of work. But we need to write the real history of Liberia. It has to be written, um, um, regardless of politics or whom I feel offended or who you think whose foot you're going to be stepping on. We need to write the real history of Liberia.
Mm.
And I don't know, maybe I'll pass the baton on to Dr. Tao. Eh? So I don't know, but we need to write this history. Okay, it's a tremendous task. It's not an easy one, but we need to get our scholars to do that.
And Dr. Tayo, add to the question, is it do we still maintain our various ethnic identities, or we just need to outlaw this whole ethnicity thing and we just call ourselves one big liberal ethnic group? So add that question to the callers' question.
Okay. The first caller maybe didn't understand clearly what I was saying. I didn't say all indigenous people they are left from their right. That was not what I was saying. There was a tape that was going around after the coup d'etat in 1980, and the tape revealed that some journalists were asking Doe, now that you have taken over and the economy is so bad, what are you going to do about it? His answer was, well, you're asking the Minister of Planning and Economics. He's going to answer. You're taking over, you don't know what you need to do. You have to go ask the Minister of Planning to tell us what's going on. And even after the Minister of Planning took over, he didn't even make any decision. All decisions were made in the executive mansion. And know who was the planning minister? It was Dr. Tuba Nantibote. We have talked on many occasions. When he took over, there some decisions he would just read in the newspaper. But be that as it may, I think efforts have been made for reconciliation. The United Nimba Citizens Council and the Grand Girette Association, we have had many meetings. I'm really interested in ethnic and regional organizations. In fact, a few years ago, I wrote a book, and the title of the book is Liberia Facing Mount Nimba. I don't know if you see it clearly. Liberia Facing Mount Nimba. And the purpose of this book was to study how indigenous organizations or regional organizations in this country operate. And one of the things I discovered in my research and my writing is that these regional organizations are essentially crucial because our Liberian government have been really centralized government. If you want a job, you have to take a goat to Monrovia and put a goat under the table, and then you will or will not get a job. But that's how people look for jobs. And I understand that efforts were being made to set up organizations that will work on decentralizing the government so that each region will have its say in the national discussion. And I don't know how well that worked or what it's doing, but there is a need for such a thing to decentralize the government so that people in Nimba, people in Grand Girette, people in Cape Mount, people in different regions will have some say in their educational system, in their political system, in all areas of discourse, so that our nation will be a healthy nation. But decision only came from the executive mansion, things will be bad. Teachers or principals and presidents of institutions are appointed from the executive mansion, and it was not the choice of the board of directors to decide who their principal would be, but the president would decide who the president would be for this institution. I think is a grave error. I haven't seen it here. And then I also believe very strongly that indigenous languages must not go to dust. In fact, I wrote a book at some point, and the title of the book is Mawe Medanki is the Ma language, both in the Ma language and English. And the purpose of this book is to help our children in the Ma area to speak the Ma language, because there have been argument or discussion on the issue of ethnicity and language. Some people have said that only English should be spoken in Liberia and all the languages should be allowed to die. They should not live at all, because according to their feeling, when people speak different languages, they bring about sectionalism, tribalism, and division in the country. I don't think that is it. You learn about, when you learn about yourself, you know who you are and you know who your neighbor is, you can live together better. But if you don't know about yourself, you get lost. You don't know about yourself. You don't even know about your neighbor. People tell us that charity begins at home. If it begins at home, to be on the national scene, you don't just jump up and be on the national scene. You have to get leadership from where you are. And knowing yourself is very important, and learning your own language is very important. It is good for our children to know the language that we grew speaking, so that they too will get better appreciation of our heritage and our culture. And people's culture, tradition, humanity, identity, and selfhood are all embedded in the language that we speak. One's language defines one's reality. We and our children may not necessarily share the same realities and the same perspective on life or view of life, but by learning our language, they will learn, know, appreciate, and understand why we do things as we do.
Dr. Taryor, the professor asked a question about the indigenous Liberian contribution.
Indigenous Liberian contribution. You see, we are all Liberians. We are all Liberians. We don't go around saying, okay, this is Bassa people contribution, this is Gio people contribution, this is my people, this is my people contribution. We are all Liberians. Indigenous people, you want to separate, okay, this is what American Liberians have done. This is what the Pele people have done. You don't do that, do you? I thought we're all Liberians. The whole effort here is to bring our people together so we see one another as Liberia instead of seeing each people or each group as this group. But
let me take my last caller, and then we can talk about, after talking about the impact, we want to see where we go from here.
Okay.
Caller, go ahead, you are live. Hello, caller, you are live. All right, go ahead and talk, you are live. Okay, we forget about that caller.
Yeah, I think we should leave that caller. Again, folks in cyberspace, you are watching Focus on Liberia. And that the question Professor David asked, you know, the whole country came together. Earlier, you talk about there were different nations, meaning there was this group, the group, they were considered as a nation.
Correct.
And eventually we all came together
to
make a one nation called Liberia. And I think his question was, what are the contribution that these various groups make to the formation of the country Liberia? And because sometimes again I listen to somebody talking about King Saboso, how he helped to unite one part of the country with the Liberian government then that was held by the settlers. And I think these are the kind of contribution he really want to see, because all they have access to reading is about the settlers going, establishing a country, purchasing the land and bringing the indigenous on board. And that's all the year that they established the schools with the help of other institutions and other government. Little is being heard of about the indigenous contribution, like the chiefs, those who were heading those different nations as you described it earlier. That's why he's trying to get.
Okay, may I explain that?
Yes.
First of all, I may start in an awkward way, but the legitimacy of what I'm saying just follows through.
Okay.
Before the 50s, education, popular education and Christian education were overwhelmingly in the hands of the mission station missionaries that came from different parts of the world.
Right.
Like Ghana Mission was established in 1926 by George Weah Halley and his wife. They trained a lot of people. I am one of those people. And a lot of them were from the indigenous community. And there were other schools open in other places, in Salaye, in Tapeta, Kakata, and other places by missionaries around the country. Then eventually, by the late 50s or so, the Liberian government started now to open public schools in other places. Now, the indigenous people went to school, and people you see teaching in all those schools, most of them are from the indigenous tradition, and they train people. Now, you can't say education, only the American Liberians make contribution in that. When a native or indigenous person trains another indigenous person or American Liberian or whoever the person teaches, that is a contribution. That many of them are also working in the hospitals and clinics as nurses and doctors. You can pick them up as Dr. Wonderkali. He is a Loma man. He had contributed immensely in the field of health. Now, even look at some of the professors at Codington. You have had some major professors there from the ethnic tradition, and they have empowered other people to be. So maybe you're thinking about, okay, what house did this person build? Or what school did this person build? But indigenous people are, the schools that they are, is proliferating all over the country. They are having their own schools. There are many people who are building their own schools, building their own clinics, building their own hospitals, and doing a lot of things. So
thank you.
To pick up one individual and say, okay, this person did this, I don't know.
I think that's a good question. Sorry about that. And Dr. Seton earlier talked about the bush schools, how they were used to train young people coming up about values, the norms of the society, how to behave in a certain way. And she was able to name several of them that helped people at the time. That can be another contribution. But the other thing is that maybe some of these things are not written for people to see. And I also want to make a contribution on this issue of changing the names of some rivers or some places. What's the essence of doing that? What is history? History is what happened. Whether it went wrong or right, that's history. That's the beauty of history. So I agree that, yeah, we can rewrite the history, or we can say that, well, this river, before the settlers coming in, was called by our people maybe Bakbo. When the settlers came, they named it this, so that we can have that diversity of the history. But to go by and say, oh, because at some point it was called Bakbo and the settlers came and named it St. John River, let's take out St. John River. So what are we doing? So it's almost like going around the thing. I don't think that.
Can I answer that question?
Yes.
This is not only a Liberian phenomenon, but it's a global phenomenon. When a place was called Gold Coast 3 years ago,
yeah,
when they got their independence in I think it was 56.
Okay.
What happened is that they changed it from Gold Coast to Ghana.
Okay.
When people in Rhodesia
Rhodesia, okay.
When they got their independence, they call it Zimbabwe instead of Rhodesia.
Mm-hmm.
So many places have changed their names.
And Upper Volta too.
Okay.
Now Burkina Faso.
Yeah.
Okay.
Burkina Faso, maybe.
All
but
right.
countries change their names, and the towns do change their names. And villages, it's important for people to change their name. Many years ago, I was called Lawrence Taryor, but I felt that I didn't need that name. I call myself now the name they named me from the beginning, Nya Kwiawon Taryor. People change their names. People change. That's how history is made.
All right. Thank you. Let me come to a very important point here. All these conflict, intra-conflict, and all that, and here we are. But there's one thing that I think is left out, and there's one tribe, the Mandingo people. Up to this point, I have friends telling me they are non-Liberians. And anytime I hear that, it just kills my spirit. And it's so prevalent that when a Mandingo person occupies a position in government, he's being looked at differently. And the same applies to the Mandingo woman. Where is this coming from about us Liberians looking at other ethnic groups in their manner and faction? And how can we as a country get an understanding that will lead to reconciliation and nation building? You go, Dr. Seton.
Well, that's a very, very important subject. People instigate or against someone who they say is a Mandingo and is holding a government position. The Mandingos are part of our ethnic makeup. Okay, they are a tribe, and they've been in Liberia for hundreds of years, and they are Liberians like the Manos, the Gios, the Dans, the Kran, the Ku, what have you. Okay, it's just that because I think this is a question of religion. I think that's where religion comes to play. The Mandingos are Muslims or Mohammedans or whatever you like to call them. So because they on Friday they put on their gown and go to the mosque, people think that they're not Liberians because most other Liberian tribes do not go to the mosque on Fridays, apart from the Vai people. Okay, but the Mandingos stick to this religiously. So people just feel that they're not Liberians. I don't know what else, how to interpret this.
Because Dr. Seton, the Vai also are Muslim, but nobody look at them as non-Liberians.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly, okay. But because I don't know why they don't look at the Mandingos as Liberians. They think they're from another country or whatever. I don't understand it.
Right. Dr. Taryor, one big phenomenon in Liberia, and I want to piggyback on what my colleague has just asked, is this things about stereotypes. And it's very prevalent among the ethnic groups. For instance, even the way we call one another. The Crown people, do you know how they refer to all these stereotypes? I think Professor Jones Dopo even think about that. If you marry a Crown woman, you get fire code, you marry this person, you eat that. Some of them may be lighthearted, but these go deep down to how we look at each other, all through the lenses of stereotype. A few years ago, a colleague and I, we started a blog called Stereotype Liberia. And there we listed a whole list of stereotypes, right? The way we refer to each other. The Crown people call the Grebo people, because they were leprosy placed in Maryland, so they call them rotten feet people. So if it's here a Crown person called a Grebo person, boy Sanju, meaning rotten feet boy. The way the Grebo call the Mandingos Bawara, which means wanderers, people that move from place to place. And sometimes some other ethnic group call the other people sometimes stupid, or they use these languages to describe them. And all these stereotypes sometimes feel inter-ethnic tensions. Or the people are known as people that eat human beings, or these other people are known as people that eat this, and all that. Speak to me on how these things build up this tension and what we can do to resolve them.
Okay, to respond to that, sometimes it depends on the particular community itself to be able to bring about the transformation. For example, many years ago, when the frontier force was organized, and some people came from the place we now call Lofa County, which was part of Central Province. When they came to Monrovia, they settled in a place. There was a man there by the name of Busi. Busi was the leader of the group that he brought from that part of the region. And then they started saying, oh, these are Busi people. So they were all called Busi people. But the people from that area fought against it and said, this is not our name. We are not Busi people. We are Lomon people. So finally, everybody called them Lomon people. But they were first referred to as Busi. Then I'm one of the advocates about the people you call Gio or Mano. We are not Mano people, we are Man people. We are not Gio people, we are Dan people. And the people you call Kwese people or Pele people are not Pele people, they are not Kwese people, they are Pele way. It's Pele people. Exactly what you're saying. People call people all kinds of names. And even the people from the Kru Coast, some people told me that they are not actually Kru, they are Krao people. So you call them Krao. Sometimes I feel a little bit uncomfortable when people call me Mano man. I'm not a Mano man, I'm a Man man. We call ourselves Man. But for whatever reason, the Bele people attach that Mano to us and it's part of us. We need to change it. We need to change our towns. Like Ganta, it's not Ganta, it's Gompa. Tapeta, it's not Tapeta, it's Tapeplu. So all these kind of changes need to be, but it has to depend on the people who live in that region to decide, okay, this is not our name. This is how we are called. But unfortunately, people in the same region continue to call themselves that stereotype name. So then people will continue to call them with that stereotype name. If I say, oh, I'm a Mano man, then of course other people have the right to call me Mano man because I say I'm a Mano man. But if I tell them, no, I'm not Mano, I'm Man, then when they are talking to me next time, they will say, oh, you Man.
Thank you.
That's so
Again,
true.
yeah, Dr. Seton, you want to say something? You can do that. Okay, let me go ahead. Again, folks in
No, I
cyberspace.
just said that's so true.
Yeah, okay. Again, folks in cyberspace, you are watching Focus on Liberia, and we have been discussing ethnicity and nation building. We went into all the conflict dynamics, why we are who we are, how we got here, the history, the coming of the settler, the conflict, and yeah, and that. Dennis just brought up the issue of stereotypes. We refer to other people who eat dog, and this kind of stereotype. I'm sure these things are common in other countries, but we try to sit down with these two professionals to give their perspective on this issue, and they have done so. Now, let's talk nation building. How do we use our diversity now going forward, to promote peace, reconciliation, and nation building? How can we coexist as a people with all this diversity? How can we use our ethnic diversity as our strength instead of as a weapon to divide us further? That is how we will ask you to close, all of you, and then let's start with you, Dr. Seton. I know I loaded it, but that's for you.
Okay, thank you for loading it, okay?
Yeah.
Yes, I think you're quite right. Um, if you look at other countries and you see how those countries use their different ethnic diversity to bring it together to form one national identity, I think we Liberians should go around the country amongst our 16 different tribes or ethnic groups and take out the best and put it together to form one Liberia that cannot be replicated, that is unique and that is undeniably identifiable by its traits. If we do that, we have a wonderful country without having to imitate this person or that other country or some other culture. We will have our own Liberian culture, our own identity. And I think that would be so wonderful. Liberia is a rich country, it's a beautiful country, it has a very rich culture, and I think we should celebrate our culture and our diversity.
Th- Thank you, Dr. Seton. And to you, Dr. Taryor, I hope I got it this time.
Got it?
Yeah, thank God I got it. And so I want you to speak on the protocol resolution with our diversity as a people. I mean, this is who we are. This is our history. This is our culture. You know, how do we use that? How can protocol leader use the diversity we have for nation building?
Well, diversity is very good. It had been part of our culture, and I'm sure will continue to be part of our culture, and it will be. Diversity is the key issue globally, not only nationally. You have to, first of all, divide the country into sections. The Man people and the Dan people seem to be speaking the same language, so they belong to the same county. The Kwele people and the Lomo people, maybe they are close together, to give them the same place. Or different ethnic group, give them the same kind of thing. This is why we even have sports, inter-regional sport in Liberia. You have the Nimba County people playing people from Sano. You have these county games. That's part of the way of bringing together. Not say, no, you shouldn't speak your language is not important, or your culture is not important. So then the point of respect, we must respect one another's culture. Respect is crucial. Do not denegate, do not disgrace, or do not undermine other people's culture. Respect every culture. In that way, we'll build a strong nation. And then we should continue to intermarry, meaning Kwele person should get a Vi person if you do want to get. It's a matter of love. Who loves you? It's not ethnicity. We should be able to get and love each other. Even the American Liberians and the traditional people, we need to get together. And the reason for that is our country will be stronger if we allow individuals to be who they are. Don't try to make one nation, one group of people to be like you. If we try to convert other people to take on our culture, we ruin the whole thing. So respect each other and accept each other one another rather. Expect one another so that we'll be able to build a greater union.
And finally, that if I may, should like the president decided, hey, Anthony, though he's from Grand Crew, I'm appointing him as superintendent for Nimba County. Should the people of Nimba work with me? And I said, no, he's not from here, because we are all Liberians, isn't it? Would that be a protocol solution, if you may, that we all can accept and try to live with, and then we'll get to that point that, hey, I think we are the same. It's just a matter of accepting that and then work together.
It happened before, even under President Doe. Go ahead, or Dr. Taryor.
Okay. I don't think they should appoint somebody from a different place altogether and just bring them in. Okay. The person must have residency. Whether you are agreeable or Vi, you come to Nimba County, I think you should have residency, meaning we should give a length of time for the person to be there, to know the people, know their idiosyncrasies, know the needs, the problems, and be able to make constructive decision about the area in which this person lives. Now, if you come and take residency, definitely you can be part of the people. You can be part of the people, even though a crewman will never be a vibe man. You'll always be crew. You cannot go take citizenship in another culture. Like they do here, you come and you can naturalize and say, oh, I'm an American. You naturalize American. But in an ethnic settings, no ethnic group a person from an ethnic group go to the other ethnic group and say, I'm a citizen. You cannot be. That's not part of the tradition. But if you establish residency there and become part of the people, you will always be crewmen, but you will also be considered part of the population living here. So you take some responsibility. They do it in the United States. Somebody who was born in New Mexico can come to Rhode Island and stay here for a certain time and become a senator of this place. The Kennedy, for example, even though John Kennedy Jr. was from Massachusetts, but when he came and found residence, say in Rhode Island, eventually he became representative or senator for Rhode Island. So if we do that, it will be fine. I know some people have been appointed as superintendent for Nimba County from Grand Jide.
All right. Thank you. Again, folks in cyberspace, you're just listening to the closing statement from our guests. We are now winding down our broadcast. We want to say a very big thank you to our panelists or guests for giving us their perspective on a very important topic, ethnicity and nation building. We are coming. Yeah.
Just give me 1 minute. We have one dissatisfied follower who wants to call. He's been having trouble calling, so I give him a number. So, Scientist Tamara, go ahead. You are live.
Okay, thank you for finally accepting me on the show.
Go ahead. You're live.
Yeah, am I clear?
Yes. Dr. Taryor, Dr. Seton, can you hear him?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I hear him.
All right, go ahead.
All right, thank you. First of all, I commend you for bringing our two historians to discuss this topic. I had keen interest into this topic because being a Mandingo, you try to teach them, but the two historians are still touching it. I was born in Liberia as a Mandingo, and there have been serious stereotypes against us on an aspect of Georgia Acts that why we continue to be called foreigner. From the history, it will tell you that there are so many contributions Mandingo have rendered to Liberia, to the Republic. Just the most popular ones. The first army of Liberia, the Liberia Frontier Force, the first commanding general was Momolu Seli, a Mandingo man. Then we moved from the Liberia Frontier Force, we came to the Armed Forces of Liberia. Also, the first commanding general was Bien Keseli, the one whose son that Bien Keseli founded the United Party. This was something that happened months ago. Not talking about King Ibrahima Sese, not talking about King Sao Boso Kamara, not talking about Prince Momolu Kamara and all of the other people before the formation of Liberia. But up to now, Mandingos are still referred to as foreigners. Mandingos are still referred to as people not from here. Mandingo may be born in Liberia, they know no other country besides Liberia, but they will still be called a foreigner.
Yeah. So
for we, the Mandingos in our historian, we have some history on that. We know some reasons. I really wanted to know from the non-Mandingo historian, what have been our own perception? What do they think are causing these things?
Right.
Why Mandingo still being referred to as foreigners? From our own perspective, from our own view, living in Liberia, hearing these slogans, hearing these stereotypes, what they think as historians have been like them causing people or other tribes in Liberia calling Mandingos, only Mandingos, foreigners. Though Mandingo have been serving in leadership, but still, that stigma. I say yes, what chat today in Liberia, that's what Mandingo put it for Guinea.
Okay.
Oh, different days.
May I address that issue?
Yeah, Mr. Kamara, I wanted to even ask you why you think so, but my panelists will address that. Let's go there.
Address that issue.
Yeah, what I think so, I have my own, what I said, but...
Okay, hold on. Let the panelists answer.
Okay, I'll be on the line.
Okay.
All right.
Go ahead, Dr. Taryor.
Many years ago, Augustine Cornet wrote a book, and the title of the book is Religion, Commerce, and the Integration of the Mandingo in Liberia. This is the book.
Religion, Commerce, and the Integration of the Mandingo in Liberia by Dr. Cornet. No.
Okay. Now, that book is a very good book. The Malinke people come in different
waves.
Well, yeah, their religion, Islam, it comes in different. Some of them are Shias, some of them are Sunni, some of them are Islamia, and other people. Some others are
Ahmadiyya.
Ahmadiyas.
Yeah.
Okay, but given the fact that this is it, many years ago when I was a student at Cottonton, I used to wear long robes and grow beard. I still grow beard now, as you see. I was arrested on many occasions at a gate in Ganta. And when they saw me, they said, "Oh, this man a Meningo man, let him get down from the truck or from the car." Then they asked me for my passport. They asked me for, I said, "I am a Liberian, I'm not Meningo." They said, "No, you dress like Meningo man. So you Meningo, you stranger." It had happened for a long time. But I think the misunderstanding here is that people always felt that Mandingos in Guinea go across the border and come to Liberia, sometimes without documentation.
Mm-hmm.
And because those persons come, they think every Mandingo, whether you are born here or not, you are a stranger. And that stereotype you were talking about, yeah, Mr. Ja, the same stereotype is with the Mandingo people. But like the young man said, Mandingo people have been in government, but not many of them, but just a few of them. In fact, there was a time that the Mali people were
Go ahead.
okay. Malinge people were not so much involved in politics. They were interested in commerce, basically. Commerce and religion. And they settled among our people, and people use the stereotype. Even in my language, we call them Meyimia. And Meyimia means people among people who don't have a place to stay. But when Meningo people came in Liberia early, they settled in the Bolopole, someplace in near Swain, in that area. And some of them have come from near, from the close part of Guinea, Masandu, Jericho, Soya, all those areas.
Dr. Taryor,
yes.
the problem the Mandingos being perceived as coming across the border, that's the same way with the Grebo people coming from Kampala to Liberia, the Crown people coming from Tai and across the that forest to Granjide, the Mano coming from Bosu and Tuo and going over to Yekepa, the other one from Ganta, from JK coming to Ganta, the Loman from Masanta, and so it's all, and the Kisi is from Gizidugu and other Cherelum coming to Liberia. So it's all the same. What makes the Mandingo situation different?
The bias on religion, the bias on so many other things. Because when the Mandingo people came in our area, one of their rules was their women will not marry Kafirs.
Is there woman business you're doing this thing?
Yeah, woman inside too. The Mandingo women will not marry those people who were not Muslims. Only the Muslim men can marry the indigenous people. And their reason was, when a man marries a woman, especially in our culture, the men have more power and authority, so they can make the woman to become Muslims. But for a Muslim woman to marry an indigenous person, the woman will not be able to make the man be a Muslim. So they were always trying to keep their children, their daughters from doing that. But that is also on a decline. So Malingi people and other ethnic people are marrying. The integration is taking place easily and sometimes without people being noticing it, but it's coming on. Eventually, there will be a time that Malingo people will accept the indigenous people, male or female. That had been one of the areas of contention.
Thank you. Next week, we're going to continue with our part 2 of ethnicity and nation building. And this time we're going to look at those ethnic factors that contribute towards national development and reconciliation. Our guests have been Dr. Nya Kwiawon Taryor, Professor Emeritus from the Banga School of Theology, and also Dr. Vivian Seton, the lady who speaks over 5-10 different languages. She has been someone from broadcast, from the professor, and she's been everywhere. We want to thank you so much for your time tonight, and I will take it back to my man, Asumi here, to conclude.
And then thank you, folks. As you have heard, we will do it again on this network focus on Liberia. Here at Focus on Liberia, we educate, we elevate, we promote all things Liberia. This is the only network that talk about all the other important issues in our community and not just politics. As you see, we are talking ethnicity and nation building. Where will you hear that? Only on this network, Focus on Liberia. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. This broadcast will be uploaded in the next 2 hours, and those who miss it from the beginning can have the opportunity to watch it. We bring outstanding guests here to help us understand the complex issues that are impacting our community. This is what we do here, and we are focused on Liberia. This is how we come to the end of our broadcast. My name is Anthony Sier, and I have been co-hosting with Mr. Dennis Jia. We want to say a very big thank you to our guests and to our viewers in cyberspace. We also want to thank you for always following us here and supporting what we do. We want to say thank you, and this is how we'll draw it down. Peace and unity is all we want. All over Liberia, say.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's how we end it tonight. We say we love this country so much, so we are so excited talking about Liberia. Let's have a blessing. Good night. God bless you till we meet next Sunday with part 2 of this very important topic.
Bye-bye.
Thanks to all our viewers. Thank you for your comments, for your questions. We are sorry we are not able to read all your comments, but we really, really do appreciate you. Join us next week.
Bye-bye.